Hi, this is Dale Olson, and I am here from Ohio State Beekeepers Association and Geauga County Beekeepers Association, also to talk to you about how to catch a swarm and what a swarm is and all about them. A swarm is the process by which a new honeybee colony is formed, and when the queen leaves the colony with a large group of bees, she usually takes up to thousands to tens of thousands of bees, and even up to 60% of the worker bees. So she takes a great number of bees with her in order to start. And this is the way they propagate the hives, and they get larger. You know, in order to try to stop the swarming, it's really important for the beekeeper to try to do a few things. In providing the colony with sufficient space before they feel crowded. This happens before April. Well, if you're in the north here, it's April, May. In the southern part of the state, it'll be much earlier. But you have to figure about 1 month before it gets really hot and they start to bring in a lot of nectar and everything else. So you have to give them plenty of space. You can also use a young, well-mated queen, are requeening once a year. And you can also try to go into the frames and try to cut out or destroy all of the swarm cells that are there. But if you miss one, well, they're going to swarm. It doesn't take much. Springtime is when all of this happens. And as the days can grow warmer and longer, the colony starts their preparations. It may be nothing to you, but they know what's going on. Keep in mind that when it starts getting warm out, the queen is laying 1,000 eggs a day. So 21 days from the first time she laid 1,000 eggs, 1,000 bees are going to hatch. And then 1,000 after that, and 1,000 after that. It gets pretty crowded pretty fast. And as the queen finds fewer places to lay, then she says, uh-oh, we got to get out of here. It's too small. And so the bees will do that, and so on and so forth. So usually spring swarms have a better chance than summer ones do. That old adage about a swarm in May is worth a load of hay, and a swarm in June is worth a silver spoon, and a swarm in July isn't worth a fly. There's a lot to be said there, because those bees that have swarmed in May have access to a lot more pollen and nectar in their hives. When the queen pheromones are not reaching all other bees, they will start to swarm. And these are queen cups. Queen cups are, I always say they're practice cups for swarming to begin. But if they do need a swarm, they will work those queen cups right away and make them, enlarge them and make them longer, about the size of a peanut. There's a number of passive ways to catch a swarm. You can put up a swarm box, and they should be between 8 and 15 feet above the ground. 1.5 cubic feet is about ideal. A 10-frame box is perfect. I've seen some people use 5-frame nuke boxes. Those work also. You can put old wax in there as an attractant, but keep in mind old wax can have moths and diseases. An opening at the bottom of 1 by 2 inches is best, and commercial attractants like Swarm Commander or lemongrass oil mimic this sense of a good swarm. The entrance should be facing south, and the hive should be in partial shade. Although when you go into the woods, you'll find bees on every side of the house, of the compass, and all kinds of different things. It's kind of interesting. Bait hives can grow to be 40 to 60 pounds, so you have to be really careful. The closer to 8 feet, the better, is my opinion on that. Here's the attractants that they use. Swarm Commander lemongrass oil has been as long as around as long as lemongrass has been around, and old comb works really well. The bees make their living out of smelling, among other ways. So you did everything right, and your bees still swarmed. Here's a couple of swarms I've taken pictures of. It's kind of interesting at where they swarm, how they swarm, why they pick this particular place, but this is just a stopping point. These are not where they're going to stay. So when they first swarm, they swarm out of the hive. What they've done is they've heard the chirping of a new queen in a queen cell, chirping to get out. And she's on the 16th day, she's ready to get out of there, and she will begin making noise, and those bees hear her and they say, let's go, let's get out of here. And the queen says, let's get out of here. So the queen leaves, half the hive leaves, and they end up in the first place they can find that looks decent. And that may be all the further the queen wants to fly at that particular point. And then after about 1 hour to 10, 15 hours, the queen will find out a good spot from her other bees that have told her where to go and find inside of a house, inside of a tree, and they'll come out and do that, and they'll go to that house or a tree, whatever the place is. So here's the perfect swarm. It's close to the ground. It's really easy to get. There's a couple other after swarms around it. Those could be where the queen had sat for a couple minutes and said, I don't like this spot, let's go to a different spot. So there may be some pheromones in that spot, or it could be that 2 or 3 queens hatched at the same time and they all took a number of bees with them. So a queen like this, the reason it's a perfect swarm is close to the ground. You can probably put a bucket or maybe 2 buckets underneath it. In this case, I may just take a 50-gallon garbage bag and wrap it around it and shake it really well, and the bees will fall into the garbage bag. The only problem is with the garbage bag is I have to be able to get those bees into a hive box really fast, especially on a warm day. But you want to keep them out. If I have them in the car, I turn the air conditioning on. Even though it's 60, 70, 80 degrees, I want those bees to cool down. And when I get them to a new box, I'll empty them into the box, and it works out fairly well. Well, like I said, it's low to the ground. You can shake the branch and let the bees fall into a container. Be careful about escaping bees. They are agitated, and I do try to keep them in a cool, dark spot until I can deal with them. And make sure that they are not overcrowded. If you put them onto too small of a container, they get asphyxiated and die. And what happens is they all throw up. They throw up, everybody gets wet, everybody's throwing up everything in their stomachs because they can't breathe properly, they're overheated, and they just die. So there you go. All your work is done for nothing. Equipment needed. To catch a swarm, 2 types of ladders, and I use rope also to tie the ladders onto tree branches or houses or wherever I'm doing. I'm very, very careful about it. I make sure that the bottom of the ladder is firmly affixed to the ground, and if it's leaning on something, I make sure that the legs are proper. They have a lot of ladders will have little tiny feet that you have to adjust to make sure that's on the ground properly. Some types of vacuum is nice to have, and it works out really well that way when capturing bees. I use a lot of 5-gallon buckets, our old beehive to carry the bees in. Various tree trimming tools are good, saws, and extra hoses and extension poles for the hoses. So here's what it looks like. This is the equipment that I carry: tree pruning scissors, a vacuum bucket, and my honey bucket, or bucket that I use, also has a honey gate. And this I can open or close so that I can adjust the hose so that there's just a light suction on my cheek. I put the hose at light suction, and it really works well. And you can figure this out because you'll figure out that the bees will actually begin to if it's too slow of a suction, they'll get stuck in the hose, and you have to reverse the hose just to blow them out of there. So you'll figure it out pretty fast. And too fast, you're going 90 miles an hour, you're getting your head banged all over the place. They just don't last real long. They can die right away. Also, here's an extension pole that I use. And the extra hose, either the hose fits into the other hose perfectly, or I just use duct tape and I tape it all together. And this is a stainless steel bee catcher that you can buy commercially. I guess they work okay. I think you just push it up there, and they hopefully you can capture them and that sort of thing. I don't use one of those. So you can buy a vacuum, and it fits right on the top. Here you can see drilling a hole in about 1.5 inches or 1 7/8 hole, something like that. That's on the bottom left one. Another way is just at the upper right, you can see it with basically the same thing. You can also use, in this case, that vacuum may not have an electrical cord going to it. It may be a battery operated one, which are really nice because you can take them anywhere and you don't have to worry about lugging a bunch of hoses or cords around. On the bottom right one is one that works, and it's the same size as your hive box, and you have a bottom piece of metal sheeting at the bottom, and that is you put that on top, this hive box on top of yours, and you pull that metal sheeting out and you just bang on that hive a couple of times. All the bees fall down, and they go into the box below them, and that works out pretty easy. So it's a nice way of doing it. It is a little bit more cumbersome to carry a hive box around with you all the time. I carry 5-gallon buckets, and you'll see it at the end of the show. You'll see my setup a little bit better. So you want to be able to have a bee vacuum to regulate the airflow. This is usually at the bottom. You want to make sure that the suction is light, and you want to make sure that the force is not going to be too fast that it was going to kill the bees. Too slow, and they'll just clog up. And the smaller the length of hose, the better. You don't want to have 20 feet of hose, because then they're running through 20 feet of hose, banging themselves up. 5, 6, 7 feet of hose is more than enough for most cases, because you can get up pretty close to the bees. So how do you get more bees? Well, you get your name on a swarm call list. Your bee club has one. Your pest control people have one. Your local police departments have one. And people who cut down trees for a living will keep your name on their swarm list. You have to be ready in a minute's notice. During May and June, all my equipment is in my car at all the time. So when somebody calls me up, I can pretty much drop what I'm doing within 5 minutes and start heading towards their house, because I want to get there before the bees have taken off. I use duct tape, a lot of it, for various things. I usually have 100 to 200 feet of electrical cord. Bug netting or house window screen and cheesecloth I use to put around my buckets. I used to use that. Now I have a bucket lid that the center has been cut out, about an 8 to 10 inch center, and I have put the window screening in that center and stapled it together. I use rope to tie myself to a tree and tie the ladder to a tree to pull buckets up. I have 5-gallon buckets with regular tops on them. I have 5-gallon buckets with screens on top of them, so that works out really well. And I also keep a list of where I find my bees. I put my name, I have an address, a phone number, location, and where the bees were in a building or something like that. I also have people send me pictures of their bees, so I know where they are. They say, I'll ask them, how high up are they? And they go, oh, they're just right off the ground. And I get over there, and they're 20 feet up in the ground, or they're, whatever, and I don't have the proper equipment, and it's pretty tough. So, and get the name of the person, the address, all that stuff is important. Location. You really don't want to be chasing hornets or yellow jackets. You want to be chasing regular bees. So here's a picture of me taking some bees down, and one quick jerk, and they all fell into this. This was at Sugar Falls, in their park by the waterfall, and police had called me up, and I was able to come there within 5 minutes. I was at work. I wasn't really prepared, and I told the cop, find me a box. So he found me a box, and I put the bees into the box and went back to work. It was about maybe a 10-minute job, real fast. So with permission, I can cut a branch down and carefully put it into a hive box. And that, but you want to make sure that owners, most of the time, they don't care. It's maybe they're part of their apple tree or whatever. It's not a big deal, and they're willing to sacrifice part of a branch to save a bee colony. So when vacuuming of bees, I always start from the bottom. If you start from the top, you're going to knock, all the bees will fall off, because you're destroying the people that are holding on to the branch. So you always start from the bottom. You work your way up. This is a maple tree, and these bees were all intertwined within here. And usually when I'm doing a hive like this, I'll probably stop in the middle, because my bees are, when I vacuum them, they don't go just into a 5-gallon bucket. They go into what the bees come in. When you buy a package of bees, that container, that package, I reuse it. And what I do is I have 2 5-gallon buckets put together, the whole count out of one of them, and screw together. And so my bees go right into the container that you buy bees with. And that seems to work really best, because I can stop what I'm doing. I can take the container out, and the bees are in there nice, and I can put a brand new one in. That way they don't get too overcrowded or asphyxiated or anything like that. You want to get them fresh air as soon as you can. So if you don't have a bee container or vacuum, you can just collect some old comb and use that. And basically use your hive tool. You can use the hive tool to push, cut, or move the bees onto some comb. And once they're on that comb, they love it. That's like, home sweet home. It's your mom's chicken noodle soup cooking on the stove or something like that. Yeah, they really like that a lot. It's really good, and you'll continue to do this until you collect all of them. You'll know when you have the queen, when you may see her on the running around, but if you don't see her, then you want to make sure that you just put her into the hive. You'll find other bees are going to the box where you are collecting all the bees, and you had that queen in there. And sometimes I'll just wait, I'll close it up, and I'll have screens on the outside by the entrance and such, or on the top. I'll put a screen on the top, and the excess bees will smell the queen, and they'll come over there, and you just let everybody, don't worry about the bees. They won't run away. They'll stay right there until, and they won't bother. Usually they're very calm. They're not trying to do anything. Keep in mind, bees, when they are swarming, have nothing to protect. They protect the queen, but that's the only thing. Otherwise, they will not sting at all. And swarms can be collected without any equipment. This guy's just using his hands just to scoop them up. So once you have collected them, you've gone through all this work to collect them, and you're done, and you're finished, and you put them into a box, and you put some frames of comb in there and stuff. And the next day you go and you look at them about 12 o'clock and they're gone. And what happened? Well, there's still a strong smell of swarm scent in there. And the queen, or maybe the queen didn't like the place you put them in, and she wants better place to live. And so now you have to, all that work went in there for nothing. So if you take a frame of brood from an existing hive and you put it in there, then the other bees will go to that hive and they'll want to keep those brood warm, and they'll keep the brood warm and they'll not want to leave. So and also I will put in a frame of honey, or do other things to keep them in there. And you want to make it as attractive as possible for the bees. You know, don't get a ratty old box or a ratty old hive and put them in there. Make it a nice hive for them. They like that. Giving them sugar water on the outside, spraying the inside of the combs and the sugar with sugar water and the whole inside. They'll lick everything clean. They'll clean it up and they feel like they're a part of it. So sometimes I get a call to get bees from people who have cut down trees, from logs like this. And you know, these were just vacuumed up, and then I come back and I cut the comb out, and you can see it's kind of a natural way of making their combs. There's no rhyme or reason. The only rhyme or reason that a swarm does is, as far as I can tell, is if you have a swarm and the bees will make a hole in their nest like this, the same way as they came from their previous swarm or their previous nest. So if their combs are facing north-south in their old comb, and a new comb, they will be facing north-south. So I get bees from inside of houses. This is a 4 by 6 foot section of bees. There's thousands of bees. Later summer, people were tearing the house down. I had to get the bees out, and I cut them open, and I probably had about 4 or 5 packages of bees out of here, and I probably had about 5 to 7 5-gallon buckets of comb and honey from this hive. And all the comb, all the brood, I should say, not comb, brood and honey. The brood I put back into a empty frame, and I will secure it. I get bees out of chimneys, and this one I was on that ladder for 8 hours one day and about 4 hours the next getting them out. They were packed in there solid, and there was nothing you could do. I mean, this is how it looked from the beginning, and there on the left you can see I've worked about a foot down, and then on the right I've worked about 2 feet down. I still have comb down there. I had to comb almost 6 feet down on this thing, and I was able to get them all out. You know, I got everything all out. Hopefully the wax moths will eat the rest of it between the next year, but yeah, it was quite a job to do, and you gotta be careful. So here I'm reassembling the hive with rubber bands, and I also use a string. I use butcher block string from a butcher, and there's thousands of feet on there. The bees can chew it up pretty easily, and but the rubber bands work really well. They're very fast. They hold them in there really well also. So that's a nice, easy way of doing it. And you try to put them together as well as you can. You know, I have my buckets marked. I know the first one, the second one, the third one, and I try to keep everything together back in there as I can. So sometimes you have to go way to the top. This is I'm up almost it's hard to tell, but I'm up about 16 feet, and maybe even higher, because the bees were in the soffit above that window, and I had to get them out of there. In the bottom section, you can see I do have my vacuum, and it's a double vacuum, two 5-gallon buckets at the bottom, and it seems to work really well in there. I have everything all set up. This ladder, you can't really tell, but I have ropes attached to it at the top, wrapped around the building, and so it can't fall. You can see on top of the table, I have one of my hives have already been filled up, and looks pretty good, ready to be taken back. So that's all I have. I appreciate everybody's time, and if you have any questions, maybe they can give you my email. It's doconstruction@yahoo.com or doconstruction@yahoo.com. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.